Hey everybody, welcome back. We are the White Hats. And here's my fellow seeker over here, Will Coleman, Ph.D.
Yep,
And I am James Wanless, Ph.D. How about that? Talking heads with white hats. So
indeed.
some of you might have seen our first show. This is the second edition of our show, and it's about being on the path. And I love that idea. We are on the path. We're on some kind of journey of life. So, Will, what does that mean to you, the path? What do you think about that?
Well, being on the path is, for me, just our natural course in life. What makes it a particular path, though, is when we become more conscious of our journey on the path. When we come into consciousness of it, when we follow those intuitions we've had along the way, uh, combine that with our analytical thinking about that, but more and more intentionally, not just being on the path, but also learning and discovering how to direct the energy on that journey. So for me, it is twofold. One,
Okay.
we're all on the path. Two, well, we have the opportunity, if we pay attention, to become more conscious of our particular journey on the path for enlightenment, illumination, self-realization.
Okay, so the path, which I agree with you, is really about consciousness, right?
Yes, becoming conscious of your consciousness.
Uh, Conscious of the conscious. Well, that's true mindfulness,
That's
I mean,
exactly right.
that is so true. But is that so that it is the destination true of everybody? That are we supposed to? Are we purposed as human beings to be on a path of evolving our consciousness? Is that what
Yeah,
it's all about?
yeah. I think we're in the long spectrum of conscious evolution, not just human consciousness, but mineral, plant, animal, and human.
Right.
And we're all on a journey, and that journey has particular manifestations, and yet it is a collective journey. And there's no way not to be on the path or in the process.
Yeah. I mean, the first time I heard of the path, I think it was from womb to tomb.
Yes,
And that's a path.
and
That's a
also
journey.
before womb and after tomb.
I love that's before womb and after
Come from
tomb.
some place, some
That's
other dimension, and we return or go to another dimension.
right. So it's kind of like BW before womb and AT after tomb. Oh, I love that. That is
I,
a brilliant part of the path because most people think of the path as only this particular lifetime, which is pretty short.
very limited, and having this particular aspect or insight into it
Right.
makes the path unrestricted to the body. It is in the body, but it's not restricted to our body,
Right.
time, space, and experience.
Well, so let's talk. Well, yeah, okay. Let's talk a little bit though about before the path that we're in right now in our bodies.
Yes.
Before that, where are we, man? What's going on?
Sometimes I'm agnostic about it. I mean, I don't know. But I imagine that we are it's still energy and consciousness that is in one way or another waiting or anticipating to become incarnated.
Hmm.
And that as we become incarnated, we gradually, not all at once, little babies initially, and we're still in the limbo phase for a while, but we
Hmm.
gradually become conscious of embodiment. And then there's a combination of consciousness and embodiment that ups and downs, pains, joys, sorrows, etc., that make us become more aware that we're on a journey.
Well,
We come, as you said, from the womb, and as soon as we come from the womb, we begin moving towards another door.
let me ask you because you're a minister here. I mean, you're an ordained minister, been a minister for many years, doctor of divinity probably, and
Theology, philosophy, religion.
right. So, I mean, how does the Christian faith play into this a thing of before the womb kind of thing? I mean, does that
Well,
work
that's
in?
interesting. I mean, there are a variety of theories, of course, but there isn't much actually prior to incarnation, prior to becoming into this dimension.
Uh huh.
It's a bit more speculation, theories, ideas about what may or may not happen on the other side. And you have variety within the Christian tradition. There's not one aspect. The most popular one is, in my way of thinking, more dualistic, eternal rewards or eternal perdition or something of that type. But there are other ideas that don't assume that, and I might add, there are more historic, pervasive notions of what is called the resurrection.
Right. Right.
So that's kind of a resuscitation, but also transformation of the body.
Well, let me ask you this.
Body consciousness.
Right. Right. Now, you're also an expert in the Kabbalah, the kind of the Hebrew mysticism school. What's the philosophy about that?
Well, Kabbalah cosmology presumes that everything comes from, it's almost like a Taoist sounding cosmology. Everything comes from the no thing, or the unlimited light, energy, consciousness.
Right.
As creation, and as we are brought into conscious manifestation and also specific manifestation, we almost immediately begin a process of ascension, a process of, what's it called, reascending the tree of life. That's the kind of metaphor for it. To reunion with the all, reunion with the all-pervasive consciousness. So in some sense, it's almost a cyclical understanding of energy descending into consciousness, into specific form, and then energy returning to Tikkun Olam, it's called. That's the mending of the world.
Right. Well, it's interesting you mentioned in the Kabbalah the tree of life, and when you said tree, because I know you alluded when we first started talking about this tonight about how we are related to nature, to all manifestation, particularly.
Yes.
I mean, because one thing on the backside of my Voyager cards is a cross-section photo of one human DNA chromosome, but to the naked eye, without all the microscopes and all that, that DNA of which everything organic on Earth, every living entity has DNA, but it's exactly the same as the human DNA. So, I mean, are we looking at we're coming from in an evolutionary way, coming from the trees, the plants, the creatures?
Oh yes, and it's beautiful that design on the back of your card. I've always been fascinated by it, captivated by it since I first became a student years back in 1985. And as you pointed out in one of the early lessons that I took with you then, that is a 10-pointed star of DNA. And so that number 10 is significant in Kabbalah for creation, for recreation, for cyclicity. And here we have it as an imprint, which makes me think that yes, our musings and speculations are actually innate and they are imprinted. They're imprinted physically and they're imprinted inside of us metaphysically.
Wow.
And that's why we call them archetypes.
The what? What do you call that again?
We call them archetypes.
Oh, yeah, right, sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
An archetype, by the way, comes from the Greek word archetypos, which means like a primary mark or imprint that is permeable and that can be seen in one way or another everywhere.
I think people don't, realize enough the importance of archetypes. I mean, like back in the Tarot, there's 22 of these personality archetypes. That's, like you say, it's a primordial imprint. And we can't help but live these out. And to me, the part of the journey, the path of life is becoming conscious of these archetypes within us. And then embodying them and playing them out intentionally and consciously, because I think that's where our power and our real wisdom is. How do you feel about that?
Yes, it's not that we can't do. We are going to be.
Well, that's true.
Creative in one way or another. Now that can manifest itself either positively or negatively in a given situation, but it is unavoidable to be a creative, moving forward in some form. What we're talking about when we connect with illumination is moving forward in the best possible, quote-unquote, light that we can do so, and in the most balanced way. Balanced for our own integrity, but also, I think, ecologically balanced. Ecologically now, meaning, again, not just human life, but all forms of life, all forms of intelligence.
Yes.
As you know, that is what is so powerful about indigenous traditions, because they perceive that aspect of wisdom.
Right. So you're talking about the indigenous, the shamanic path and traditions, because they are so aligned with nature, spirits, and all of that.
Well, they spend more time, I believe, observing and attending to the organic relationship between microcosm and macrocosm.
Mm-hmm. Well, isn't that what we call Hermetic mysticism, as above, so below?
Yes,
kind of
as
thing.
within, so without.
Right. And, and very few people. We've forgotten that, I guess. I mean, the whole idea is, I love what Plato said. Plato said, the great Greek philosopher, that the path to illumination and enlightenment is about remembering who we are.
That's correct. And much of which he learned from other indigenous traditions, like the Kemetic tradition. I mean, you know this. Many of his ideas were borrowed and then, as you were, acclimated to the context in which he himself lived. That's the student of Socrates and others, yes.
Right. So for me, a part of my path, I guess I would describe it, is kind of going back, to go ahead, because like you say, which is a brilliant comment, it's all cyclical.
Yes.
I mean, everything moves in a circle, right? A spiral.
And cycles and rhythms and patterns, that's correct.
Absolutely.
It's not linear. I don't believe it's linear in the way that we typically try to rationalize it out.
Right.
Rationalize it out, but life happens in rhythms and also in episodes. And, part of the sermon is I believe, is knowing and paying attention to, and then moving with, and also modifying those episodes as part of a greater rhythm.
Okay, let me ask you about that episodes. This episodic, what does that actually mean? I mean, I like it. Sounds cool. But what do you mean by that? Episode?
Well, an episode to me seems to be an experience that seemingly almost comes from out of nowhere. That seems to happen. And it seems that way, I believe, because we have not attended to, again, the larger rhythm and flow and cycle of things, not just in our own personal individual lives, but in the life of the planet, in the life of the solar system, the galaxy, etc. And then also in small things, both giant and small. Wisdom is about discerning, again, and then not so much fighting, but participating and modulating in our own lives.
Right. So the path is everywhere at all times in everything, in a way.
Yes.
What I find
and within us.
Totally. And what I find amazing about the cyclical thing is so interesting, because to go ahead, we really have to go back first. Which, I mean, if, like, for example, you want to run forward, what we all do is we push off backwards. We go back on our heel, push off, that then propels us forward. So people forget that our history, our human history, our Earth history, our universe history, I mean, how can we really go forward in a way if we're so unconscious that we don't.
Going forward should incorporate what we have learned from our perception of the past, because that is what brings proficiency.
Yeah.
It brings proficiency, and it also stimulates evolution. We mean evolution biologically as well as spiritually.
Right.
So we learn from the past. We learn in what we call the past, because again, that's nebulous in a certain respect.
Right.
But we learn what I believe is proficiency, and we learn how to, sometimes, not always willingly, but we do learn how to let go of the things that are less efficient.
Well, let me ask you, because we've been talking about cycles and episodes and evolution. I mean, where does evolution stand in the church these days, actually?
Again, it's the same as I said before. Sometimes the church is all stereotyped based on what is most pervasively seen.
Right.
And what's most pervasively seen tends to be more linear, more episodic, more, unfortunately, in some cases, negative. But actually, in the longer sweep in history of the church and of Christian thinking people, there has been tremendous conversation, not so much accommodation, but also recognition that for example, the biblical text talks more in parables and metaphors and narratives than it is in modern day contemporary science. And so in its own context, it's accurate, it's powerful, it's archetypal.
Right.
As long as you don't try to make it
Right.
do something that it was never intended to do.
Wow.
He described the 21st century.
Yeah. Gosh, I think we've just opened up a lot of questions.
Well, that's good.
A lot of great
That's why
conversation.
we're seekers, and that's why we're the white hats.
Yeah, right, exactly. But, Will, our time is up for this episode.
Well, for now.
But we will cycle back, so all you friends of the White Hats, be prepared. Stay tuned because we will be back. Hey, thanks, Will. It's been great talking to you again.
Take care.
Okay, man. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yep.